Okay, class, we are going to cover some questions on Learner Module 6 as well as Competency Check 7 and 8. If you have any additional questions, just chime in as we go along. I'm going to actually start, I'm in section 6C of your homework, and I'm actually going to do numbers 11 and 12. That was the one your classmate asked for. Okay, so let's look at number 11. Okay, this is just an equation that has a couple different skills involved in it. So let me get my pen out first. I'm going to start just by rewriting it. Well, talking about it and then rewriting it. Your goal when solving equations is to get the variable all alone on one side of the equal sign and everything else on the other side. Right now I can see that I have the variable as well as some parentheses, something being multiplied outside of the parentheses, something being added to the parentheses, set equal to another addition problem. So we want to simplify all this as much as possible before we start moving things around. So on the right hand side, I'm actually going to add these together first before I do anything. And then on the left hand side, I'm going to actually distribute and combine like terms in order to simplify as much as possible. Okay? So that's what we're going to do first. So when I rewrite this problem over here, I'm actually going to already combine the right hand side. 16 and 27 gives us 43. Then the next thing we need to do is, and I'm so sorry for my voice, I feel like I'm catching a little congestion here. On the left hand side, I need to simplify all this as much as possible before I start solving. So I'm going to distribute this negative 6 to the x and the 9 because that will get rid of my parentheses. So this gives me a negative 6x minus 54. I'm just bringing the 367 down, and I still have the equals to 43. Now again, before I start solving, I need to combine like terms as much as possible. So now I have negative 54 and a positive 367. Now since they have different signs, my 54 is negative and my 367 is positive, I'm actually going to subtract these and get 313. And I'm going to take the sign of the highest number, which is positive, and then I'm going to bring down everything else that I did not use yet. Okay? Ginger and honey. I'm on it after this. I feel like I woke up like that. So far, so good? Or do we have any questions so far? Okay. So now I'm going to continue to solve by getting my variable alone, and that means I need to move this positive 313 to the right hand side by doing the opposite operation, which is minus 313. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So that's going to cancel and leave me with a negative 6x, which is okay. And again, here I have 313, which is negative, and I have 43, which is positive. That means I'm going to subtract and get 270. This time my highest number is negative, so I'm going to take the sign of the highest number. Last but not least, to get x alone, I have to divide by the coefficient, which happens to be a negative 6. So a negative divided by a negative is definitely a positive, so I'm going to get some kind of positive number. And it happens to be positive 45. And that would be my final answer there. And again, we're dividing by negative 6 because negative 6 is being multiplied by the x. So the opposite operation of multiplication is division. Any questions about that one? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and clear this and go to the next one. Your classmate also wanted me to look at number 12. Pretty similar question, so I'll go ahead and work this one out. Again, I'm going to rewrite it so I have some more space, and when I rewrite it, I'm going to already have combined these two terms, which are just numbers, okay? So I'm going to get negative 8x, or negative, and then times x plus 12, plus 1015 equals 55, because 31 and 24 are 55. Then I'm going to continue to solve this by distributing my negative 8, because distributing the negative 8 gets rid of the parentheses, and 8 times 12 is 96, and it's a negative 8 times a positive 12, so it's going to be a negative 96, plus the stuff I didn't use yet, and equals the 55. On the left hand side, you can see that let me change my color real quick. On the left hand side, I can see that I have some like terms here, which again I want to combine. And again, 96 and 1015 do not have the same sign, so I am going to subtract them and take the sign of the highest number. So when I subtract these, I get 919. Since the highest number is positive, it's going to be a positive 919. I bring down the negative 8x, the equals, and the 55. And then I'm going to continue to solve by moving the 919 to the other side by doing the opposite operation. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay still? Just want to make sure my audio is okay. Alright. So I got negative 8x equals, and these two numbers again have opposite signs. So I am going to subtract them to get an 864, and I'm going to take the sign of the highest number, which this time is negative. And last but not least, to get my x alone, what do you guys think I'm going to do? What step do I have to do to get my x all by itself? Don't be shy. What do you think I need to do to get this variable alone? I am going to cross it out by how. What operation am I going to perform? And this, very good. And I'm going to divide by a negative 8 on both sides. So again, a negative divided by a negative I know is positive, so I just need to figure out what is divided by 8, and it's going to be 108. Any questions about that one? Okay. Oh, good. All right. Sweet. Okay, so let's see what else. I have a couple other questions that your classmates were asking me to cover. They also wanted me to go over when it comes to word problems. Well, Ivana, if you want to look for a word problem for me to go over, I'll be glad to go over a couple of those and try to give you some extra explanation about them. Okay, so I'm going to go to section 6D now. Okay, so you have 6G, 2, 6, and 7. Okay. 6G, 2, 6, and 7. Okay. I will definitely get to those. Okay. So now I'm going to 6D. And I'm going to do a couple, I'm just going to pick a couple questions out of this section. I am guessing that it's because there are some decimals here that maybe there are some issues. Alright, I'm just going to pick a couple. The thing with solving equations with decimals, it's not any different than solving the equations we were just solving a minute ago. The difference is remembering and knowing how to deal with decimals. Okay, so in this problem, it only takes one step to solve this equation. You can see this is number 10, so this is considered one of the more difficult ones technically, and it's really not. It's just knowing how to divide by decimals. So right here, in order to get the z by itself, what I need to do is I need to divide by 2.5, okay? Which crosses that out, which is great, which leaves my variable alone, which is great. But this is the part a lot of people have a hard time doing without the calculator. So let me just give you some reminders. So technically the numerator, which is 5.5, is being divided by the denominator, which is 2.5. Now the rule is that when you're dividing by hand like this number out here cannot be a decimal. We have to make it look like a whole number, okay? And the way we make it look like a whole number is by moving the decimal however many places we need to. It just so happens that this one, I only have to move the decimal once to make it look like the whole number 25. Now with that said, in math, you know we never change one thing without changing the other. Since I moved this outside decimal once, in order to be consistent, I have to also move the inside decimal once, which is now going to leave me with a 55 instead of a 5.5. So now, just in case you don't notice, your decimal is here. So I'm going to actually do the division on this problem here. So whenever I'm dividing decimals by hand, I always like to go ahead and put the decimal up in the answer first before I get started, so later on I'm not lost when I'm trying to remember where I was at. Okay, so now I'm going to ask myself, can 25 go into 5? No, it cannot, so I will place a 0 above that 5 to indicate that 25 does not go into 5. But can 25 go into 55? Yes, it can. It can go into 55 twice. 2 times 25 is 50 and leaves me with a remainder of 5, which is okay. And then I bring down a 0 and I keep going. Can 25 go into this 50? Yes, it can. Gives me a remainder of 0, which is great. And I know that my final answer is z equals 2.2. Any questions about that one? All right, perfect. Let's see, who else got logged in? Pablo's here, Ivana's here, okay. Thank you for joining me. And Pablo too, if there's any questions you want me to go over, just go ahead and type them in the question box and I'll make sure I add them to the list of questions that I'm covering, okay? All right, so I'm going to clear this. You're welcome, you're welcome. All right, let's see what the next one looks like. Okay, let's work on this one. I just have a question to ask you guys since you're logged in. Getting tutored or being taught this way online, does it almost feel like you're in class or does it still feel a little awkward? You can type your answer in the box. I won't read them out loud if you don't want me to. I'm just curious to know if this is beneficial to you guys, if you like it, you know. You feel like you can actually get help this way, or do you still feel like I have to be in a face-to-face class? Good, I'm glad to hear that. That's good. All right. Okay, so for this problem, same thing. This isn't any more difficult than the first few questions we covered in section 6C. Again, the difference is just the fact that there's decimals here and just knowing how to deal with those decimals. So to get this Q by itself, first I need to get rid of this 7.9 by doing the opposite operation, which is subtraction. And it cancels from the left, which is great. And on the right hand side, I have to do some manipulation. So when you're adding and subtracting decimals, you have to remember to line them up properly. Obviously, I cannot take a 9 from a 6, so I need to borrow. This becomes 5. This becomes 16. 16 minus 9 gives me a 7. And then again, I can't take 7 from 5, so I have to borrow from the 1. So the 1 becomes 0, and that becomes 15. So then this becomes an 8. And technically that 0 is gone, and then there's my decimal, right, because I kept everything lined up. Since this was a positive 16.6 and this was a negative 7.9, I subtracted to take the sign of the highest number. The highest number is positive, so it's going to be a positive 8.7. And then last step to get the Q by itself is, what do you guys say it's going to be? What's going to be my last step to get Q by itself? Exactly, I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide by 3. So that gives me the Q all alone. And again, you guys are not supposed to be using calculators, so you should be able to go off to the side of your paper, rewrite the fraction as a normal division problem, and work it out. So this is a whole number, which is great. I'm going to put my decimal up in my answer so I don't lose it. 3 goes into 8 twice. 3 times 2 is 6. It gives me a remainder of 2. I bring down the 7. 3 goes into 27 9 times. Gives me a remainder of 0. I know that Q equals 2.9. Okay. Any questions about that one? Sorry about the ambulance, guys. Goldenrod's pretty busy. I don't know if you can hear that. Okay. All right, no questions on that one. Let's see what the next one looks like. You want me to do this one too, or you want me to go to the next section? I think these are all pretty straightforward. This one you just have to subtract 10.1 to move it to the other side. This one you just have to divide by 3.8. Yeah, let's go ahead and go to 6E. Let's go to 6E and do some of those. Okay. Okay, so just like 6D had decimals, and I'm sure that's probably what made it a little more difficult. 6E has fractions, and I know everybody hates fractions, but there are a couple things we can do to make them a little bit easier. So I'm going to warn you, it may seem like a little bit of work, but the little bit of work up front helps us get rid of the fractions so that you can solve an equation that just has whole numbers, okay? And it's something that we call clearing fractions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this first problem and I'm going to rewrite it just so, again, we have more space. So we have 1/2 x plus 1 over 5 equals negative 5. Now I could totally solve this and leave the fractions there. I could subtract by 1 over 5 over here, take a whole number, subtract a fraction and all that stuff, but it leaves a lot of room for mistakes. So what I like to do is what we call clear fractions. And that is, we would look at the denominator. So I see here I have a denominator of 2 and 5. And I would ask myself, if I was going to make a common denominator, what number would that be? If I was going to make a common denominator, what number would that be? What do you think it would be? 10. Very good. So what I'm going to do, instead of changing these denominators to 10, I'm going to use that same number, and I'm going to multiply the entire equation, even this whole number here, by 10. And I'm going to write it as 10 over 1 so you can see how the whole number looks when it's a fraction. Because really what we're doing is now we're going to multiply this. We're going to multiply 10 over 1 times 1/2 x, 10 over 1 times 1 over 5, and 10 over 1 times negative 5. So essentially what we get here is we get 10 times 1 is 10, 1 times 2 is 2, and then obviously don't leave out the x. And what is 10 divided by 2? 5x. Same thing here. I'm going to have 10 times 1 is 10, 1 times the 5 is 5, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Equal sign, equal sign. 10 times negative 5 is negative 50, and that's a whole number, so I didn't have to do any simplifying. So from here, now this is easy, right? 5x plus 2 equals negative 50. I'm so glad you got it, Ivana. It's really, that's what I mean. It's not that it's that difficult. It's just a little more work. But once the work is done, look at this equation. Look how easy that is to solve now. So I'm going to just pick a different color. So to get my variable x alone now, I'm going to subtract by 2, right? So I'm going to get 5x equals, I'm going to add these two numbers together because they have the same sign. I get negative 52. Now, obviously, all that work isn't preventing the answer from being a fraction, right? But it at least prevented us from working with the fractions. So here you can see I get x equals negative 52 divided by 5, and technically this is simplified as much as possible because 52 and 5 do not have any common factors. So I'm going to actually type this in, and with iMath I do always use parentheses when I type in fractions. So I'm going to type in negative 52 over 5 because I find that it prefers the parentheses. Let's see if it likes me, okay? Hopefully it does because I'm recording this, so. Where's my submit button? There it is. Yay, it liked me. Okay. So what did you think about that? Not too bad, right? Okay, let's do another one, right? Because the practice is really what makes it easy. And that method would work right here too. Even though there's only one fraction, what do you think I would multiply by in this problem? Smaller, not 6. If 3 is the only denominator you see, what could I use? 3, exactly. So let's do this one. I know that, and I think that's the biggest thing. I think people see the fractions and they freak themselves out and they make themselves so nervous that they overthink it and they believe that it can't possibly be that easy, but it really is. So we are going to use 3. So, and again, in this problem, there's only one denominator. So instead of me asking the question of, well, what would the common denominator be? Well, I don't have to think about too much here. The common denominator would just be 3. Okay? So this time I'm going to multiply the whole problem by 3, the fraction and these two whole numbers. Okay? So I'm going to have 3 times 2, which is 6. And technically this is over 1, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. Bring down my x. Here's my, and 3 times minus 2 is a negative 6. And 3 times a negative 8 is a negative 24. Then we simplify. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X minus 6 equals minus 24. And now you can see that action of multiplying by the denominator got rid of the fractions. So now I'm left with an equation with all whole numbers, and now I can just solve the way I know how. I'm going to get 2x equals, and again these two are opposite signs, so I have a negative 24 and a positive 6. So I'm not going to add them. Instead I'm going to subtract them. I'm going to get 18, and I'm going to take the sign of the highest number, which happens to be negative, divide by 2, x equals a negative 9. And as you can see, sometimes the answer ends up being a whole number anyway. Questions about that one? All right, sweet. Let's pick a couple more. Let me see what time, 10:45. Okay, I want to make sure I get some of the other problems in here too. It's kind of the same. Okay. I mean, this one, I think it's trying to make you think it's different. You see how it wrote y plus 4 over 1? I mean, really, that's just 4, right? Equals 3 over 8. If I were to look at these two denominators, what number would I choose to multiply by? What number would I multiply? 8, exactly. Don't let this confuse you. And I can write it over 1. I mean, it's not going to change anything. But I already know the denominator I'm going to multiply by is 8 to get rid of all those fractions. I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 8. So this time I get I get 8y plus 32 equals 24 over 8. And then when I continue to simplify that, I get 8y plus 32 equals, and 24 divided by 8 is just 3. Another way you could have looked at it, right, if I was doing 8 over 1 times 3 over 8, really that's just canceling and I'm left with 3, which is what you see happen here. So no matter how you want to look at it, if you want to cancel first or if you want to multiply and then cancel, you're still going to get the same answer. So then to get 8y by itself, I'm going to subtract by 32 on both sides. Okay, so I get 8y equals, and again, these are opposite signs, so I'm not going to add them. I'm going to subtract them and get 29, and I take the sign of the highest number. And then the last but not least step to get y by itself is to divide by 8. My y is going to equal negative 29 over 8. And that will be my final answer because 29 and 8 do not have any common factors. 8 has a factor of 2, 4, and 8. Well, 29 isn't divisible by 2, 29 isn't divisible by 4, and 29 is not divisible by 8. So I cannot simplify this anymore. And that would be my final answer. Again, use parentheses when you're plugging in your fractions. MAT0018 tends to like that a little better. Okay, so let's go on to some of the word problems in section 6G, the ones you were asking about. Let me go back to those. So let me ask you guys something else. Do you think that I should do this more than once a week? Or I've kind of just been doing it when I get a lot of questions about something. So do you think I should just do it once a week, more than once a week? What do you think? It's so hard to pick a time that works for everyone. So last time I had about 7 students logged in, which is great, but like today I only have 2. So I never really know, you know. But then I can tell on YouTube, I can tell that a lot of people are watching the videos after, so I guess that's good. Well, I just want you guys to know, if you ever want me to do a session, all you have to do is say so. Sometimes when I don't get any questions, I feel like, oh, they must be doing okay. But when I get questions, then I feel the need to do it. So if you guys want me to do one, just put it out there and we'll pick a date and time. Okay? Alright, so this person asked for 6G number 2, 6, and 7. That was you, Ivana, right? So let's look at number 2. I have to make my screen a little smaller so I can actually see it. Alright, so it says, let me change my color. I don't want red. I like blue. Okay, the following equation, P equals 111T plus 18,900, gives the total population. So P stands for population. Population of a small city in T years. So T stands for the years. After the year of 1954. Use the equation to determine when, so specifically what year, the population reached 21,231 Okay, so what we want to do is P. Okay, we're gonna rewrite our equation. P equals 111T plus 18900. Hold on real quick, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, never mind. Okay, so they're telling us the population is this much, so P is this, and it wants to know what year. So all I'm going to do is plug in the number they gave me for P equals T into the equation they gave me. I'm going to solve for T. That's it. So they gave me an equation that had two variables. It had a P and a T. It gave me this one, and it asked me to solve for that one. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So in order to get T by itself here, I need to subtract by this 18,900, okay, on both sides. So you can see I'm going to have a significantly smaller number, right? So I get 2,331 equals 111T, so 111T. And then to get T by itself, all I need to do is divide by 111 on both sides. So I'm going to get T is 21. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to say in year 21, right? This is the part that probably confuses people, because T stands for years, but T stands for years after 1954. So this is 21 years after 1954. So 21 years after that means 1975. So that's what I'm actually going to type into my answer. 1975. Because it wants to know what year specifically. Not just number of years. It wants to know what year. And you can see there, it liked my answer. Okay. So that was number 2. Let's go to number 6. Okay. It says, let me get my pen back. It says, Christina recently hired an electrician to do some work. On the final bill, Christina was charged a total of, and this is just how I do word problems. Whenever I read them, I just like to jot down what seems to be important. So a total of $690. $210 was listed for parts. Okay. And the rest was labor, which they didn't actually say what it was, but it was the rest. If the hourly rate for labor was $80 an hour, so I'm going to say labor was $80 an hour, how many hours of labor was needed to complete the job? Aha. First, write an equation you can use to answer this question. Okay, well, if it costed her $210 in parts plus $80, and I'm just going to use H for hour, even though it's telling me to use X. I think hour for H makes more sense. It's going to equal a total of $690. Did that make sense? That's our equation. They spelled it out to us. We took these words and turned them into a mathematical sentence. Okay? So 210 for parts plus $80 per hour. Now again, they never really told us how many hours it was, but now with this equation, we'll be able to figure out how many hours it was. Was a total of $690. So when I come over here to type it in, I could type it in a couple different ways. I would probably type it in as 80H plus 210 equals 690. Okay? And then solve your equation in part A to find the number of hours. Well, that just means solve for H or X. Again, they did say use X. So when you go to type it in, make sure you type in X. I was just being a rebel. Okay? I don't want to follow directions ever. Okay, so I'm going to get 0, 8, 4. Alright. And then last but not least, so again, I subtracted these because the signs were different. So now I have 80H equals 480. So to get the H by itself, I'm just going to divide by 80. So I divide by 80, divide by 80. My H is going to equal 6. That means he was there for 6 hours. He got there for 6 hours. Okay? And how about that? Is that one okay? Take your time with the word problems. I usually reread them 2 or 3 times before I even write anything down. And as you can see, when I do write them down, I kind of jot the information down as it goes because I hate going back and reading the whole thing again. Alright, so let's do the last one. The word problems definitely take practice. They took practice for me too. Okay, so now we got our pen back. A rectangular field is 10 times as long as it is wide. So right here, they're talking about a shape first of all, and then they're talking about 10 times as long. So now they're describing the shape without really giving me a whole lot of information. So before you do anything, go ahead and draw the shape. It's a rectangle. Alright. It's 10 times as long as it is wide. Okay, well, if it's this wide and it's 10 times as long as it is wide, that means my length is 10 times the width. And they really didn't say anything about the width yet. That's why I just labeled it with W. So a rectangular field is 10 times as long as it is wide. So that means if this side is W, this side is also W. If this side is 10W, then this side is also 10W. Then it says if the perimeter is 2090. Well, perimeter means when you add up all the sides, right? No matter what the shape is, that's what perimeter is, when you add up all the sides. I could get real specific and say the perimeter for a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. But I think that just kind of complicates things more than necessary. The perimeter, you're just adding all the sides. So if I add all 4 of these together, they should equal this, right? So I'm going to have 10W plus 10W plus W plus W equals 2090. Because this was the perimeter they gave me. So all 4 sides, when added together, should equal that. Once I'm here, now I'm just using my equation skills. 10 plus 10 is 20, 21, 22. So I have 22W equals 2090. So when I divide by 22 to get the W by itself, I get 95. Now here it's asking me first type in the equation. So what I would type in would be 22W equals 2090, and I'll go type that in to make sure it accepts that. Then it says find the width and the length. Well, the width we know is 95. The length is this, 10 times W. So that means to find out the length, I'd actually have to do the math. So my length is actually going to be 950. So now let's try to type this in because I want to make sure that it likes my simplified version of the equation. So I'm going to get 22W equals 290. And then my width is going to be 95. And then my length is going to be 950. Now let's see if it likes all that. It did. It did. Awesomeness, greatness. It even took my simplified version. So what do you guys think about that? All right. So I think the last thing that one of your classmates wanted me to go over was competency check number 7, which I believe is actually in learning module 5. So I'm going to go back to that one. And it was competency check 7 number 3. So you guys know your competency checks, even though I have them up there as we go along, your competency checks you can keep working on until finals week. So keep working on those as much as possible. And you want me to do 6H number 1 or number 2? Okay. 6H number 1 or number 2. Okay. So we go to this one, no problem. Competency check number 3. Okay, so this one is all about translating and whatnot. So let me get my pen back. We have Cassandra is 11 years younger than twice Chastity's age. Write an expression for Cassandra's age. Let X represent Chastity's age. Okay, so Chastity, we're going to call Chastity X, okay? And we're trying to figure out what to call Cassandra. So it says write an expression for Cassandra's age. So Cassandra is 11 years younger than twice Chastity's age. Well, twice Chastity's age would be 2X. And 11 years younger would be minus 11. So let me go ahead and type that in. So we get 2X minus 11. Let's see if it likes us. Very good. Alright, so that's that one. And then I'm going back to 6H. And that should be the last 2 problems I'll work on today. 6H, 1 and 2. Oh, I'm still in learning module 5. Hold on. Okay, so we have, get my pen, an isosceles triangle is a triangle with 2 sides having the same measurement and one side being different. So I'm just going to pretend that this is an isosceles where these 2 sides match and this side is different. Okay? The longest side of an isosceles triangle is 12 centimeters less than twice as long as the other sides. The perimeter of the triangle is 104. Find the lengths of the 3 sides. Okay. And it says, and list them in ascending order, not descending order. So not from greatest to smallest. We're going to go smallest to largest when we actually go to enter them in. So it seems to me that it's telling me that the longest side is 12 less than twice the others. So I'm going to go ahead and label these bad boys as X. They match. They're both the same. So whatever X is, they're both going to be. This side here, which we know is different, is 12 centimeters less than, so I know it's going to be minus 12. 12 centimeters less than twice as long as the other sides. Well, if the other side is X, twice that side, and then take away 12 because it's 12 less than that. So whenever you have something less than something else, it's always subtract that number. Okay? So say it one more time. The longest side, which is this side right here, is 12 less than twice the other side. And if the other side is X, that's why it's 2 times X. Now, if the perimeter is 104, that means that when I add all 3 sides together, this side plus this side plus this side, it should equal 104. So I'm going to go ahead and write x plus 2x minus 12, because that's one side. Here's my second side. Here's my third side. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4x minus 12 equals 104. And then I'm going to get x by itself by adding 12 to both sides. Okay. So when I add 12 over here, I get 4x is equal to 116. To get x by itself, I have to divide by 4. So I get 29. My x is 29. So that means that this side is 29, this side is 29, and this side is 2 times 29 minus 12. So I have to actually work that out. And 2 times 29 is 58, and 58 minus 12 is 46. So this side is 46. So since I'm writing from smallest to largest, I would write 29, 29, 46. And I'm going to go ahead and type that in just to make sure I'm doing it correctly, because I make mistakes too. Sometimes I misinterpret things. But let's just make sure we're good as golden. There we go. I got all green check marks. So I'm good to go on that one. Let's see, erase. Number 2. Let's see here. This is kind of a similar type of question. It's doing a lot of describing. You have to write a lot of expressions. You have to express what they're trying to describe. So in a recent election, Abby received 38 more votes than Barbara. Okay, so already I got Barb and I got Abby. And it's telling me that Abby received 38 more votes than Barb. It's already telling me that. Then it's telling me if the total, so this and this, the total was 548 votes. Out of both candidates, that was the total votes. Find out how many votes were received for each. Write the equation you would use to solve this problem using B as the number of Barbara's votes. Okay, so I wrote Barb, but instead we're going to make that just B. Okay. Write an equation you would use to solve this problem using B as the number of Barbara's votes. Okay, so what I would say, that if Barb was B and Abby was 38 plus B, and the total of, so we got just Barb by herself, just Abby, so this is Barb, this is Abby, and the total between both of those is 548. My equation would be, oh, thank you, honey, 2B plus 38 equals 548. So that would be my equation. So that's what I would type in that first one, because that's what they want. They want the equation. So I'm going to do 2B plus 38 equals 548. Okay. Then it says, after solving your equation, how many votes did Barb have? Well, to figure out how many votes Barb had, I have to actually solve for B. Let me change my color. So to solve for B here, I'm just going to minus 38, minus 38. I get left with 2B equals 548 minus 38. I get 0, I get 1, I get 5. And then 510 cut in half will be 255. So B equals 255. So that's how much Barb got. Barb got 255. After solving the equation, how much did Barb receive? So let's type that in. 255. And after solving the equation, how many did Abby had? Well, Abby technically was 38 plus B, right? So if Barb had 255, because that's B, and I add 38 to that, I get 293. Now technically, if I want to check my work, 293 plus 255 should equal 548. So let's submit that. Very good. What part were you lost on? Could you not see me or did you get lost? Oh, for Abby. Okay. Well, they described, I'll go back. They described, they changed the numbers on us, but it's the same thing. They described Abby as having 38 more than Barb, right up here. Abby equals 38 more than Barb. Not equals 255. B is 255. So it'd be 38 plus 255. Okay, very good. Very good. So I think that sums it up for us today, guys. I want to thank you for joining me. I think we did quite a bit today. We went over quite a few questions from each section. You guys probably noticed I gave you until next Friday to get caught up on everything. We only have a little bit left. The last few learning modules aren't very long. I really want you guys to spend, you know, the last week in February really just worrying about your final and your competency checks. I'll hold another session probably on Wednesday to go over anything else you guys are having trouble with. So by all means, if you think of questions you want me to go over, email them to me or text them to me, and I'll make sure that I cover them. It is going to take a few minutes for this to get on YouTube, but as soon as it's there, I will make sure to post it to everyone. And I just want to say thanks for joining me. And you are very awesome too.